Okay. Thank you all so much for coming out today on this warm summer day. My name's, and welcome to the Art Show Artist Panel Discussion. The Art Show was curated by Craig Stover, who is the host of ArtShow, the video interview podcast that you've been doing it for like 5 years? Okay, and if everyone should grab a mic, let's see, and speak into it, because we're doing video, and so we want to make sure your voice is heard. So when you talk, just hold it like an ice cream cone, as my mentor, Dagny Corcoran, told me. So, okay, my name is Clifford Eberly, and I'm the exhibitions associate here at Hicks Art Center Gallery. And I'm going to forgo doing any bio introductions since we have such a wonderful group of you here. But if you want to say like a brief word or two about yourself before your answer to my questions. But I'm going to start alphabetically, so I'm going to start with Francis Beaty over there. And let me get some images, or the image up here. There we go. So Francis has this wonderful installation of sculptures in the courtyard. And Francis, I'd like to know if you could choose to talk about one of these topics in your sculpture. Just choose one. Scale, repetition, or emotion. Because I remember hearing your talk, and I guess I'm going to ask you to talk about emotion first, because I didn't.
So
really,
I don't get a choice.
When I was listening to your talk, I never really thought about like capturing emotion necessarily in a sculpture. So I think if you could maybe describe how that happens.
Oh, sure. Is this right? Do I sound good, everybody? Okay. As you can see, it's very irregular shapes. And with me, it's an emotional journey myself. Those pieces were in other work, and I'm all about reusing, recycle, and give everything a new life. Am I okay with this? Okay, a little closer? Okay, that's better. See, I'm not very good at this. And my husband would testify to the fact that I really, once I'm in the zone, it's all about just bending it. People go, well, how do you do that? So it's an emotional reaction, and action creation is what it is. And I have to tell you, the way our world is right now, I believe that's what came out with these pieces. I did them on my deck. They were beautiful before, but right now I still think they're beautiful. But I'm working out what's happening in the world through these pieces.
That's great. And then they are kind of uniform too, like in a way, like the repetition. Does that happen a lot in your work?
I like them to look like they're like a small army or a formation or aliens that have landed. And then when I decided to call it oriented flatness, I knew I didn't want to make them be anything but other about the shape, that they originally were flat, obviously, and that I transformed them, much like a creature from another place. So I always think of these as aliens, maybe from my own brain. But
that's fantastic.
And I wanted them to look like they were hovering. They're floating off of the stones. That was intentional. And I also did not want to do a typical sculpture that was vertical. I'm all about, now I feel like it's a new direction for me to start doing these low-hanging fruit and make people look down for a change. Not that that's negative, but just another perspective. And for me, that's the scale game. When you look down, they're going to look totally different because you're not going to have the sky as the backdrop. You're going to have the earth. So for me, I feel it's something about grounding right now that is emotional for me. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's interesting because with sculpture, a lot of times we're paying attention more of our horizon line or above, and
right.
Looking down it empowers us too as humans when you look down on something.
Right.
But in this case, the earth is very overpowering as well sometimes.
True.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. We're going to move to Jill Bonovitz. So let me bring your piece up here. This is Porcelain Vessel. I know you do a lot of different types of work, and for again in your interview with Craig, you mentioned that some of the lines in your pieces result from how you actually pour your glazes over top of them. And so my question for you is, have you always included experimentation in your process? And in that, do you feel a sense of freedom and flow in the unknown results? Or is there some little bit of anxiety in that when you're working in the studio with your pieces like this?
There's no anxiety.
Oh, hold your...
There is surprise. I never know exactly what I'm going to get.
Just hold it next
Just
to
hold
your
it next
mouth,
to your
like an ice cream.
I never know. You hear me?
Here, use this one.
Hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
I never know what I'm going to get. I figured out some of the things, like pouring and doing different things to get the lines, and but in ceramics, or at least for me, it's all good luck, bad luck, but you just can't be precise, or at least I can't be precise. That's pretty much
Okay.
how I go about it.
So in this piece, the color that you chose, was that something intentional, that like this particular glaze that you were thinking about?
Well, the blue is a sulfate that I put underneath the clear glaze. And I always think I'm putting it on evenly, but doesn't happen. And the ridges are, I use a big mold and I pour clay into the plaster mold. And when I pour it out, I work it so that I get those ridges.
What about the dots? There are dots.
The dots
The
are
dots?
glaze, underglaze. That I can be precise with. That's about the only precision.
But after the fact, when you look at them, do they speak to you and talk to you about water or sky? Or,
Yes, they do.
because that's the surprise.
Both of those, right. That is the surprise, and I like that. So I made a series of these.
So that element of surprise is, it's inherent in the
It's
way
inherent in
your
the-
prize and your
yeah.
process.
In the method.
Very good. So next up is Diane Burko, whose work here is called Corona Series Panel 4. And that's in the main gallery. And first, I wanted to recommend to all of you to check out Diane's website. For me, it's kind of one of those touchstones in a way where I'm like, this is an example of how an artist can really establish themselves and get what they've done and just what their interests are in a very organized way, which I think is really important for not only artists of my generation, but also young artists. So I encourage you to look at Diane's website. And I wanted to ask you if there was a moment where you made the decision to allow yourself and your art to become a conduit for environmental activism, or was that more evolutionary over time?
Well, it was evolutionary over time because I've been doing it for a long time. It's not on? It says it's on. You're the only one who has a good mic. Is this better?
Yeah.
This is the magic mic.
No, this is.
No? No? How's this one? Okay.
Perfect.
No, I mean, I've always been a landscape painter, but in the last 20 years, it's been about the environment, except the one that we're showing is a departure because I made it during COVID. I wonder if you could figure that out. And it's one of a series of about 5, and it's the first painting I did in 2020, you know, when we were all home in our studios. So it's not really about the landscape. But if you think about COVID, it is about the world and how everything is connected. And when I speak to students, you know, I speak about it that way. So, you know, what comes around goes around. And yeah, and that's what COVID did, and that's what climate change is certainly doing. If something happens in the Arctic, we'll feel it here and in other places in the world.
Right, right. And for you, do you have a project you're working on now?
Yes, I've moved in my travels and explorations with my husband. We started out with glaciers, so we've been to the Arctic and the Antarctic, and then the next area of concern, or they're all areas of concern, was coral reefs, and right now my focus is the Amazon rainforest, and we're actually going back to the Atlantic rainforest next month.
Terrific. And how do you feel, like for young artists, how do you feel like they can sort of have a voice in their art, like for certain topics or urgent messages that...
Well, I think young artists have a voice, and whatever their voice is what their art is going to reflect. It doesn't have to be the environment. It could be LGBTQ. It could be anything that's affecting them, and as long as your work is authentic and it comes from your heart, although it's not easy to do, let's be real. But, you know, that has to be the well. It has to come from you and what you're reflecting. And, of course, as Francis said, there's a lot of crap going on right now, so, you know, we respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I was going to make paintings about COVID, but I have no choice. So that was one of the early ones. You might remember, yeah, New York, and then it's a map, so it goes all the way to California, Washington State, but that was at the beginning of the COVID plague.
So red was more, were those
Yeah.
like hot spots at that point?
Yeah, and actually there was a map. There's a world map in it. So again, the idea of it having to do with the world. That's my phone. Sorry about that.
No problem. Well, and alphabetically, it's nice because we're going to Stuart next. And Stuart's work, I feel like it's a different kind of environmental, if you want to call it activism, because it deals with these majestic trees, at least this series. And so on your website, you state for your Oculus series that recent fires caused by global warming have challenged the survival of what remains of these remarkable creatures. And creatures being the redwoods and the sequoias, that from within you take these incredible photographs. And from before I even read that on your website, it actually took me, I couldn't really figure out what I was looking at first. And I think that's the sort of wonder of these pieces. And even people that have come through, like I was a security guard came through here repeatedly, and he saw different things in it. And so I was wondering if you could talk about the sense of life in your images and how the viewer becomes the tree itself looking into the sky and the treetops, and how did you come to put the viewer into this vantage and within the tree, like if you were thinking about that, or if that was a concern of yours when you were making the images?
Well, you know, the easiest thing to talk about is the way you make pictures. But the most interesting part is what happens after the process begins and what you learn from it that you don't expect. So that's why I liked your comment. Is this working?
Yeah, a little closer.
So there was a time in my life when I made pictures trying to get clues about the world I lived in when I was a very young artist. It was the first series I ever worked on. It was called Modern Mythologies. And then After that, I started hiring myself out to work with archaeologists and anthropologists, working in parts of the world where people spoke to the landscape clearly, and the landscape appeared to clearly speak back. And what I did was I photographed these ritual performances. But there was a part of me that wanted to be involved in the process so that the landscape would speak to me. And about 30 years ago, I came up with this conceit to make pictures that were related to this idea of a language in the land. So most of my work is pattern-based. It's related to the world that we recognize, but I always photographed in a way that you could see something that was recognizable, but in a way that you never quite saw it before. So it put you in a place where you weren't sure whether you were looking up, down, or where you stood. And also inside these patterns, there were mildly recognizable images. I mean, if you go to the Gates of Hell, the Rodin Gates of Hell, you can see where images begin to appear and then they disappear into the lack of formation. That always interested me. So these particular pictures, which were made inside living giant redwoods and sequoias, and in a small remnant of what was once a glorious, gigantic forest, has in it all this kind of imagery that is like animist imagery, which you could pull out images that you could see in tribal art, from my eye. And I photographed them in a way to relieve or reveal that kind of imagery. Along with that, there are layers to looking at this work. So initially there's seduction about seeing what's there and trying to decode what it is you're looking at. And the other end is all the wonder that comes from doing that is disappearing rapidly from the world, because we're disappearing the very thing that makes us curious about the world and turning ourselves into the machinery that we're creating and closeting ourselves into. So it's an endless sort of variation on a theme of where we stand right now and the wonder that we can still experience. And I think what artists often do, at least in my case, is try to reveal the veneer that holds us inside of our own small little worlds, tear that open for a moment so you can see the vaster world around. That's the goal.
Right.
Very good.
Yeah.
That statement.
And also, you're referring to, at least in the materials, I don't know if this was intentional, but the way, like you're referring to film and digital. And so one thing I'm curious about, not only with your work, but photographers in general that maybe started out in film or use film versus digital. And I wonder with the sort of like the gaze of the viewer, or maybe even the gaze of like what you're photographing in nature, like back at you, like has that changed from film to digital? Have you noticed?
It's an interesting question in that this is my very last film project. I started it took about 10 years to do because these trees are very rare. Finding enough of them, in a good summer maybe I could find 3 in 2 months of photographing. So it took 9 principal summers of photographing to get enough for what you would call a series of pictures. And I did that, the first half of it with film. After that first half was over, cameras were now available and affordable where I could get the same kind of results without a tripod even, using a digital camera versus a Hasselblad I'd been using. But I realized that I was photographing apertures. Aperture is very rooted in the world of photography that I grew up in, and I wanted to finish it within that mold. However, what I also discovered is that when I began making the prints, there was so much more information that could be revealed if I scanned the negatives and then printed them from those scans, because the shadow areas held all these great secrets that in the darkroom might not come out.
That's interesting.
And so, I think photography since this period, for me anyways, has sort of disappeared. The agreement between a photographer and the audience no longer exists. There is no there in terms of reality. So whether you shoot with a camera with film or you make digital pictures no longer really matters. In fact, the pictures I'm making now are initially taken from the real world and then kind of spun out of control like some sort of psychedelic Edo period woodblock print. Because they have a root in the real world like these do, but the agreement, the gentleman or the gentlewoman's agreement that this is reality no longer is of great importance. The truth comes from what you can get out of the image after looking at it.
Sure. Wow. Well, thank you for that.
Welcome.
Yes. So this is Lothario's Last Supper, and Lothario is a sort of a glutton, right? Or like he's just a sort of womanizer, like seducer.
Exactly.
And with your work, I wanted to ask you about myth and symbolism and narrative and sort of how that shapes your decision making. Because like, how do you choose what myth or what symbol, and like the peacock feathers and the monkey?
Well, so, gosh, I was loud. For me, it's not, I don't choose. I actually, if you saw some process shots for me, it develops as I'm working. I have no idea. I have a general idea. Something may come into my head saying, oh, I want to depict men lunching. That's how that started. Men lunching on a lawn, kind of like an, old Renoir or Degas painting or something of that sort of Seurat. And I went to another show with someone that paints very, very abstracted figures, Sarah McCrae Gordon, and I love how she puts on paint, nothing like me. And I thought, I don't need a lawn, I need a table. And so it was really about turning the tables on the Lothario. My first intention when I thought about it, coming out of Me Too and all of this stuff about how women are objectified, and so it's not a myth and a grander myth. It's more of a personal myth or somebody else's personal myth. I'm not doing Greek myth. I'm not doing anything of that sort. So it's all about feeling for me and experiences. And in the end, I wanted the women to have the power and not the Lothario. And when I first started out, the Lotharios were constantly having the power, and the women were just objects in the plane. And when I came up with this and his demise, pretty much, and peacock feathers also for me, there's certain symbolism I use regularly through my paintings. It could be peacock feathers, it could be fire, it could be skulls. Threads are big, blood's big. And I don't arbitrarily just lay it down. It all has a various meaning. So like the monkey is sort of the harbinger of things. It's more the soul element of what's happening because of his ruthlessness as a Lothario. And you can see there the monkey's holding the knife, and he's got that wound in his side. And so you're not exactly sure who's done him in, but but he's done him in. And so the imagery just comes along. It'll change. Some paintings change absolutely drastically when I start. And I could never control that. It's all about being kind of fearless and looking at what is it that I want to say that I'm feeling or that I experienced through somebody else. And so many a time I will wipe something completely out or paint over it. I'm not precious. You would think I am based on how layered that is. When you see it's almost, I have this two sides of me. One is abstracted in a way, and one is then in the finishing process is this. When I start out, I use these big old chunky brushes. I don't even do working drawings. I just scribble on the canvas. And it's really vigorous, and that's where I sort of get the kinks out. And I also work on several at once so that I don't become too precious with one thing. It's only at the end, when I go to finish this, that I focus in on, okay, I need to finish the monkey or whatever. But in general, in working it all out, it's a process of storytelling, and I call it doing by feeling rather than thinking. Even though it looks like I think a lot, and I do, I really want to feel what resonates in that for me in that story. So, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Do you feel like painting is the painting is the medium that you found to express that?
So when I started, I had no idea what kind of painter I was. I honestly was clueless. I went to, I don't know if anyone knows here, Tim Hawksworth does. So he launched me in a way, not him, but working with him and that going in there and peeling back the onion layers within me of who I was as a painter. If you ever said I was a figurative painter or a portrait painter or anything like that, I would be like, no, not a chance. And his workshops brought that out. And what I found was I really feed off of, and my well is fed by, interacting with other people and their stories, not just mine. So it's a more universal thing. I have a few paintings that might be specifically about me. My drawings tend to be that more, actually. They're more intimate. But my paintings are really about going to the coffee shop and pulling in the noise and, dissecting it down and putting it into its little corners. And then I come up with, I need to say something about Lotharios and what do they mean and who are these young women? And the other thing about the imagery, I don't plan imagery. I really somehow, I don't know if it's the great divine, the universe, fairies, I have no idea. Imagery comes to me as I'm doing it, and then I'll look up the meaning and I'm like, oh, that's what I need to know. So whether it's the great catalog of the brain that has it subconsciously in there and I pulled it out,
maybe someone's speaking to you telepathically.
I just really open myself up.
I'm serious.
And I don't dream. My paintings aren't my dreams. A lot of people think, do you paint your dreams? I was like, no, I just paint what that moment feels like that day. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's enlightening because I didn't really know the process and when things came to you that way.
If anyone wants to see a process, I have some photographs here. You can see how different it is to this.
Very cool. All right. So let's see. The last but not least, of course, is Craig Stover.
Damn, I thought I could get away with it.
So this piece, Deluge, speaks to art history. And so I wanted to ask you about the role of art history. I think it's very important to you from what I've gathered in the short time that I've known you. So I wanted to ask you how it informs the way you communicate through your paintings. And so like the subject matter, but you're like twisting it with different art movements as well. And so it's kind of like an insider's view in a way, but I just wondered if you could describe like how you started with that art historical referencing.
Sorry. So I love art, and I love looking at art. I look at art every day, and that's one of the reasons I started ArtShow, because I learn just as much from art history as I do from living artists. And I try to absorb as much as I can. And so I like to look at everything, but I'm very sort of specific on, I get hung up on certain ideas, and they just ruminate in my head. And the way I work in series. So sometimes a series will take 2 years, sometimes it's taken 10 years, a thematic. And I like that way of working because once I have a theme that I obsess about, that gives me room to play, to experiment, to try new things. It's like an armature, a structure. And so this is the first of a brand new series that I just started called Deluge. And I got really fascinated with, it's the late drawings. There's about 10 drawings that Da Vinci did at the end of his life called Deluge. And they're these wonderful drawings of just natural disasters and hurricanes and wind and explosions. And thinking about, coming out of COVID and when I put together what I see happening in the world and in the political world and environmental world, it is a deluge, right? We are just being bombarded by all this stuff. So I thought, okay, that's a good idea. I'm going to hold on to that. And so this is actually sort of an introductory piece to it. The figures themselves, I started drawing during the pandemic, and I started to just do automatic drawings. I had no concept of I knew I wanted to do figures, but they just sort of pop out of me. And so these figures did pop out in an early drawing, and I like the idea that it's both a pieta and not a pieta at the same time. I like the idea of making something where the viewer uses their own imagination in the picture, that it can change for other people. And then I actually had the figures without the rain for a long time, and realized that they were kind of like a statue. And I thought, well, this is great. Let me throw in some weather on top of this statue, because that remains, but the weather will change. My best guess is that the figure will probably leave, and I'll probably end up making just pure abstract works, still based on the deluge. But I like the idea of referencing art history. You know, the ideas that other artists have had are often springboards for new ways of looking, new ways of seeing. Even though it was, maybe done 100 or 500 years ago, it's the ideas, it's the core, it's the content that I really like. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's super valuable to develop a visual language for artists. And
yeah, I've always felt that a lot of artists I know spend their entire lives developing their own language of mark making, of their own specific palette, and then they use that language to tell stories that only they could tell. And I think that's what I find so fascinating.
Yeah, that's terrific. Very inspiring for all artists and everyone that wants to be creative. So I wanted to ask all of you as the panel, and you can respond the way you want to. As art educators, we're here at a community college, and I know some of you are or were educators as well. With issues with funding or diminishing budgets in the arts, have you noticed any sort of folks or people that have sort of come at art education in a different way that you would suggest to teachers or other artists that are doing something to sort of elevate arts without having it go away, I guess is my question of what can we do really to ensure that we're still going to be able to teach art to kids and adults, get them to museums. Yeah, looking at art. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I also think that, since the dawn of time, there's a need to make art. Human nature is to make art. Even if in the most dire of situations, it's human nature to express themselves, whether it's through art, dance, music, whatever. So I don't think it's going to go away completely. Certainly the model could change. Universities are going to suffer. But I think it's our job to step up and say, I know this from having a 31-year-old who's an artist and also a bartender, and I said, just figure out how you can pull in the shekels when you need to pull in the shekels, and you make the art. And I'm not going to tell you not to make art. My parents told me not to make art, and I held off so long. I don't know if I was ready even, but I want him to have that choice and that voice, and I think it's important that we give them permission, not permission, but say, go for it, and figure it out. We're there to support you, to anchor you, to tell you our story on how we've made it through, and every one of us probably has an extremely different story, maybe same kind of thinking, but I think they really need to look to the museums, as you say, and other established artists and even up and coming ones and chat and just say to the teachers, okay, I can't afford that. What can I do? And there's ways to get around it. Find, people give you things. I'm mentoring someone now. I'm just trying to support her. She's really struggling. And just say it's okay. And speak. Put it down on paper. Make that line.
Yeah, and having a network of support, and I think it's pretty available. Thank goodness for the internet in that regard, that we can connect with people that way, that we can ask people for help if we have the confidence to do that.
I don't think we should lose legit human connection, though, because the internet's great and we get sucked into it. I get sucked into it every day. But I think this kind of thing, even going to a museum and just chatting with someone, the guard, like we did today, we were having a chat with the museum guard. I mean, I just think the human connection is still the most valuable connection we have. And if we lose that and go to AI and whatever else, then the jig is up.
When I was growing up, I remember hearing advice about, well, if you want to become a doctor, don't look at how much it costs. You just do it and you'll figure it out later, right? But the one epiphany that I have realized, and it took me a long time to realize this, that the largest group of arts patrons in this country are the artists themselves, right? It's us. We're the ones that buy the canvas and the paints. We pay for all of that. So you just kind of get it done.
I also think that there are alternative things like the clay studio, which is very neighborhood oriented. And so people who've never been exposed to clay are being exposed, and things like, there's a clay mobile that goes out to the schools. So I think that can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And community. And Jill was one of the founders of the Clay Studio. And that happened because you got together with your friends who were all in the field and said, what are we going to do? And you did it. And I think community is one of the most important things. And it is all around us. But I think social media can lead to community, especially with Instagram. I have met fellow artists on Instagram. I have a new good friend in New York now who's a painter, because we liked each other's work and we realized we knew a lot of the same people. She came to my show, I went to her studio, and what you have to do is reach out. You do the DM, and you really can meet. You and we connected after. Yeah, so I think we can take AI even, or, any kind of social media, but don't leave it there. Don't be passive. Take it and make it your own, and make it more human. And I think it can be a vehicle.
Yeah, I'd like to share that I had that same kind of experience where I reached out to an artist on Facebook in Japan, and so we followed each other for 4 years. Just recently, in March, I was in Japan. She said, you're going to be in Japan, I will come see you.
See, that's great.
She traveled 5 hours on the train to meet me. So I would like to share that to any artist who thinks that social media is the end of us. It can be the beginning. For me, it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship and something else that I never expected would happen.
Yeah.
That someone would care that much about me. We're not Americans. She has a whole different culture. And to tell young people about that, to not be afraid. Fear is the last thing.
Be fearless.
Then they have to just see what's going to happen and not be afraid and apply, and just reach out to people and not to be intimidated by artists that you think are way above your level. Let's not put each other in the caste system. And if some other artist doesn't want to respond to you, fine. But if you really want to talk to somebody that you've admired, I'd say you call them on the phone even. If you really want to have a chat, just get right through it. And then on another note, I wanted to highlight that so many of these students have to work a job, or maybe someone's a plumber because he's good at that, but he will make good money as a plumber, but he would really not like to do it, but he has 5 children. The point is, as a plumber, he's going to learn how to look at things differently. So just by encouraging these people that have other careers, that happened to me. I was in the building trades and architecture and had to do that for an income, but it taught me how to see things differently. So by instilling that into their minds, that no matter what you're doing, it's going to pay off. It will all come out in the wash, and just reinforcing that.
And it's never too late.
Yeah, never too late.
Until you're in the dirt.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else? Anybody? All right. Well, let's see, what time is it? I wanted to invite the audience, if you have any questions, to ask any of our artist panelists. And if you, let's see, I think I'll try to do the.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for sharing your stories, for sharing your experiences, which are wonderful and very interesting to young people and older people at large, like everybody, and also sharing your art. And as far as like how we can all help support, that's just thank you, Bucks County Community College, for giving the platform to all of you and other artists as well. So yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody have any questions they are dying to ask? You sure? Okay. Thank you.
I like the title of your show because it's just the art show. And I wondered when you put the show together, just can you narrow down like how it all came together and how these wonderful artists got to be together? I'm just curious how this all worked out.
That was my point. Craig needs to speak not just as an artist, but a curator, because you did it all.
Yes.
So the title really references the show itself. And it's the reason I titled it so simply is I've noticed a trend lately that seems to be popping up, that it seems like a lot of artists are presenting themselves with a quantifier in front of their name. Like nobody can just be an artist anymore. There always has to be some form of a struggle that goes, oh, well, I'm an ex-con artist, or I'm an ex-drug user artist or whatnot. Like it's marketing within the name. And I don't look at artists that way. I don't care your culture, your background, what you've done before. I care about the work. And that's why I just wanted to keep it simple, the art show.
Very good. I think that. Was there a question over here? Oh, yes.
Question for Rachel. We got a good feeling for how you arrived at your process and the meaning in your work through the course of making the painting. What about the color? How do you come up to your final palette? Is it similar to that, or do you have certain references?
So when I start, unlike a lot of traditional figurative painters that do reside, various layers, I don't even know all of them. I'm not going to trim them all. I just start out with bold color. It's how I think and feel. And when I started painting, my paintings were a lot grayer, muted, not out of any conscious thought. And over the years, they've just been getting wildly colorful. And I realized one day, I sort of had this aha moment. I'm thinking, where the heck is this color coming from? Because I'm not thinking about it like, oh, I'm going to paint pink today. And I realized it's a way for me to soften the blow, so to speak. Like if I showed all that was going on, if you look at my paintings collectively, all of them are based on trauma, what's going on in the world, misogyny, how boys are raised to objectify women, all of these things. And I thought, if I just paint that, I wanted to be Anselm Kiefer. That ain't gonna happen. It's just too, I want them to be visceral, but I also want them to be sort of this Alice in Wonder kind of like land you're brought into, and you're not hit over the head with the constant pain and suffering that we all are dealing with every day. So it's kind of a way of putting on rose-colored glasses and going, okay, I know it's there, I don't want to really look at it, but I have to face it. But it's a way for you to live with it and face it. You know, it's like having sunshine and fresh air. We don't need to live, for me, I don't need to live in doom and gloom every day. And I love doom and gloom, believe me, I feed off of it. But when I create, I want to have this way of you to come in and go, oh, and then go, oh, and then go, oh, you know, like sort of take this dive in. It's a bait and switch. Total shell game.
Very good. Anybody have any other questions? I just wanted to ask Jill a quick question because it popped into my head again when I was watching your interview with Craig. I kind of got a picture of the way your studio. You mentioned like all these different zones, and so I wondered if you have any sort of advice or like how that started for artists that are starting out, or even artists like myself. I have like one tiny room and gets disorganized very quickly.
I'm lucky to have a very large studio, and I don't want the glazing area to be where the making area is. And I also use different color clays. I use terracotta, I use black porcelain, and they can't contaminate each other. So luckily, I have this really big space where I can have areas for each thing. Right now, I'm doing a project, and unfortunately, it's taking up every table. So, and I've been working on it for a year. So I've cleared off one table, and I just brought out some porcelain clay and started working there, taking a break from the project, which is wire. I also work in wire sometimes. So.
That's great. Did you want to add anything, Craig?
I just want to give a pitch. So if you haven't been to ArtShow yet, that's a YouTube channel. When you go through the exhibit here, every artwork has a little QR code next to it. You can take your phone and click on that QR code, and it'll take you directly to that artist's interview. So you don't have to watch it here. You can click as many as you want. You just save them. So if you want to learn more about the artist, because that's the whole point of this show, is to learn about new artists, to see something you like and have access to it, I also want to encourage you to subscribe. And the reason for that is the more subscriptions I can get, the more the algorithm pushes it out, which means the more people learn about all of these artists. So when you go onto ArtShow videos section, because you will see, I've interviewed like over 150 artists now. So you can see all of them and then just take your pick. Or you can just one and just let it go. So. So once you're on YouTube, there's a big old button right there that says subscribe. So you just click on it. You do have to have a YouTube account, but that's easy. It's free to do. You sign up for it. So if you hit subscribe and you don't have an account, it'll tell you this is how to set up the account. So it makes it really, really easy to do. You can share the videos. You can do all kinds of stuff. So one final thing. The way ArtShow runs, there are a lot of Philadelphia artists because I'm based here in Philadelphia. I know a lot of Philly artists. So I started interviewing all my friends, and this is how it sort of grew. But all artists who are on the show also get to make recommendations for other artists to be on the show. So that's one way that ArtShow grows. The other way is, as an artist, you can apply. I actually have an application right on my website. So it makes it really easy. You just apply. I still have to vet people, mind you, but it makes it really, really easy because there's not a lot of this, and there should be a lot more.
Yeah, that's well said. So if no one else has any other questions, I want to thank all of the panelists for being here. So I want to give them a big round of applause.